Tonight on First Tuesday.
In the name of the bench, I call you to the degree of the utter bar.
Inside the bar, the ceremony, the struggles and the rewards.
Obviously, some of the more senior cells are earning immense sums of money.
With the bar at the crossroads, we take a privileged look at our most privileged profession. Good evening. When Dorothy Parker described one of the highlights of the London season as sliding down a barrister, she had a point. The profession has always had a certain social cachet, a sort of establishment glamour. But change is in the air. The Lord Chief Justice said last week he wants to get rid of wigs and robes, and the Lord Chancellor has been considering the biggest reform of all, an end to the barristers' monopoly of higher court representation. With growing criticism, too, from within the profession of racism and sexism, First Tuesday decided it was time to look behind the scenes at privilege under pressure, focusing on three very different sets of chambers. We still can't film in court, of course, but then what happens in front of the judge is only half the story when you're called to the bar.
This is the first time I've actually worn a wig. They're very expensive things made out of horse hair, apparently. I'm told they're the tail hairs of a certain Arabian stallion. I don't know whether that's true. They're rather expensive to buy. I think they're a couple of £100, if not more. I was lucky enough to pick mine up second-hand from a member of the bar who was retiring. Some of the modern wigs that you can buy, I think they're a little bit cheaper and made out of nylon these days. Obviously, they're going to be more hard-wearing, but one of the legends of the bar is that they make you go bald quicker, and that's one of the things we're all concerned about. So I much prefer my horsehair wig.
Julian Charles Rigby Dale. Mr. Julian Charles Rigby Dale, in the name of the bench, I call you to the degree of the utter bar. Congratulations and the warmest of welcomes to your new status of barrister. Now, it is obviously a privilege to be a barrister, but with privilege goes discipline and loyalty.
At 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, I'm on Waterloo Bridge waiting for my pupil master. And we're due to go off to Wandsworth County Court to do a housing disrepair case. I think we're going to drop in on the client first on site just to have a look at the property, see the general state of it. It's quite a normal day, really. I often spend my time standing in central London waiting for somebody to pick me up to go to court. Hiya. Yeah.
I've got an appeal today in the Court of Appeal involving the Broadwater Farm riot and murder of P.C. Blakelock, which the Home Secretary has referred to the Court of Appeal so that the court review the convictions. And my role is that as one of the barristers involved in prosecuting at the trial, I have to represent the Director of Public Prosecutions at the appeal hearing with the other two people who were briefed by him at the trial in 1987.
Do you think you're likely to succeed today?
Well, the prosecution win no victories and suffer no defeats. And that is the tradition of English prosecuting, and long may it remain so.
When I was attempting to get a pupillage, I made the choice of putting in my application form that I was gay, and in every place that I went to, I was quite clearly the best applicant, and I was quite clearly discriminated against simply on the grounds of sexuality. Thereafter, my card was marked as somebody that was rampantly out. Babe? Yeah? What time are you going to go down to Toulouse tonight?
Well, I'll ring you from Tottenham Court Road.
Okay.
Because I'll be in there about 5:30 and I don't know how long we'll be.
Okay. I may go down on public transport.
Yeah, that's okay.
But we're not going to drink, are we?
No, of course not. It's Tuesday.
Marianne? Yes? Have you put those frills on my tailcoat? Yes. You wouldn't be an angel and bring them for me, would you? Just look at. So you've put them on there. Lovely. The dress that I'm putting on now is essentially ceremonial dress nowadays. Normally in court I wear my silk gown and tailcoat with a short wig, not the full-bottomed wig. And I don't have the frills, which would be quite cumbersome in a courtroom, as you can imagine. It's fine.
I'm single, I don't have a family, and obviously that helps as far as the bar is concerned. I mean, there are a lot of women who do it with a family, but I think it's a very, very demanding combination indeed. When I started, there were no women in chambers. I was joined after a year by another, and then there was a gap of 10 years before we took on 3 women who are relatively junior tenants, which has made a much better balance and is very nice for us. I think there's a subliminal level of discrimination, but no more than there is in life in general, really.
There's a tradition of having church services at around about the beginning of the new year, the new legal year, with the senior judges and the Lord Lieutenant and High Sheriffs and senior members of the bar. These ceremonies and the ritual of the law, they'd be terribly easy to get rid of, impossible to recreate. Every barrister belongs to one of the 4 inns of court. Most barristers, in fact, have their chambers within the inns and their properties, which are like islands of tranquility in the heart of the city of London. It's a wonderful area to work in, and I suppose one has to say one's very privileged to be able to work in such beautiful and tranquil surroundings.
We are very establishment chambers on the whole. We have a large number of ex-heads of chambers who are High Court judges and a number of circuit judges. And I think we're regarded as being fairly high profile. This is our chambers board. The members of chambers which are from Roger Bell downwards are listed in order of call to the bar, which is their seniority in chambers. That's me. I watched my name being painted up and I feel quite proprietary about it. I think it's perhaps less significant nowadays, but it used to be quite a thing to sort of come out and watch the signwriter paint your name up for the first time. You watch it slowly going up. You get painted out and you go up stage, and one day I'm going to be up there.
Put that in my lock upside down so that no one sees it.
The setup is that we are all self-employed. We're not a partnership, unlike solicitors, but we share chambers and we share the administrative staff, clerks and typists.
No, I think that is a bit low these days, yes. Yes, I mentioned to her that we'd probably want stage payments. I was thinking about the same sort of area, about 25 on that one.
Each group of barristers, each chambers has a clerk, and he is the middleman between the barrister and the solicitor. And basically his job is to find the appropriate work for each member of his team and to negotiate their fees with the solicitor. If you want to end up at the top, then these are undoubtedly good chambers to be in. And it is a bit of a conveyor belt in the sense that it's quite hard to get off it once you're on. On the whole, I think there is not much room for those who are not pretty ambitious.
I don't think many barristers set out to be judges. I think probably a lot keep their options open. I think they're also aware that if they become a judge, they leave behind many of the attractive features of the bar, their independence and the variety of what they do and the people they meet in the process. And of course, for a senior and a successful silk, becoming a judge entails a considerable drop in income. As for myself, I'm too young to say.
People have described this as a lefty set. I think probably it is a radical set of chambers.
The landlord would be obliged in both nuisance and negligence to abate the cockroach infestation, full stop. Open brackets C, section 58, open brackets 2, capital A, close brackets, full stop. Typist, can you please sign it? Robert Latham, 1 Pump Court, Temple, and date it. Thank you, typist. That is all there is on this tape. We are a young set of chambers. We have no Queen's Counsel. We all concentrate on legal aid work. We do a range of work, whether it be criminal defence work, family, housing or general social welfare law.
There are a number of black people in these chambers. There are a number of women in these chambers. And that was also a consideration for me. Because where you are, it takes up a much greater part of your life than if you were just doing a 9-to-5 job.
We do not believe that legal services are merely a commodity to be determined on a marketplace. We consider it's very much an issue of a social right, access to the courts, and that is a right which we seek to meet. We recruit openly and on ability rather than through the old boy network, and I think that's one of the major problems of access to the bar and access to the judiciary at present.
You pressed 221.
I did that drugs case of yours, so the judge adjourned it to the 20th of January.
Oh shit, I really wanted to do it. If I'd known, I could have got released from the case I've been doing because I made my speech on Friday. What a waste of time.
People don't imagine that a black woman can be a barrister, which is one of the reasons why I came to the bar, in order to break that type of stereotype. There hasn't been a week that goes by in my career where I haven't had discrimination in some form or other, either on the grounds of sex or on the grounds of race. So I feel it's very important to do talks to schools and polytechnics, particularly to black or female students who want to come to the bar.
I don't terribly want to express opinions about my feelings about the Broadwater Farm case, if only because the rules don't permit it. But I think it's very sad when evidence in any particular case is found to be wanting after a jury have returned a verdict of guilty, because it doesn't help public confidence in the administration of justice. And for anybody who participated in the trial, it's obviously not a very happy aspect of his work. And of course I feel a sense of responsibility for the evidence, because it was the evidence that we jointly presented to the court.
John Nuttin, who's number 3 Treasury Counsel. He's been with us now for about 20 years, very much high up on the prosecution ladder. I like to think we're the best. We've been at the top of the tree for certainly the last 50 years. White-collar crime has now become a great part of chambers practice. And I think comparing with criminal chambers that there are in London, I think we're up the top. David Whitehouse, he's been a Queen's Counsel for about 2 years, and he's doing extremely well. Very nice advocate, very nice bedside manner in court.
You told me what 5 old Etonians here and 2 baronets. Higher up chambers.
2 baronet sons. That's true. I think the bar as a whole was, a generation ago, much more restricted to the upper and upper middle classes. But you can imagine that nowadays that's one of the things we put out of our minds when we're choosing somebody.
Could you say what barristers here would expect to make?
I don't want to know what my colleagues are earning. I'm not sure that I could bear to live with it if I had the idea that some of them were earning more than me. I don't know. Obviously, some of the more senior silks are earning immense sums of money, but then they are in the top half dozen criminal QCs in the country. You'd expect them to earn a lot of money. It's a free market. They're in competition with everybody else in the country, and people are paying more because they're the best.
So a top criminal silk could be getting, what, $500,000?
Oh, yes. The very top.
Does the clerk here still get 10% of barristers' fees in the traditional way?
He does, but out of that he'd have to pay for the junior clerks, and he'd make a contribution to Chambers' expenses. But nevertheless, he'd be very well paid, of course.
But it must mean that he's getting more than a lot of the more junior barristers in Chambers, doesn't he?
He'd probably be getting more than some of the senior barristers in Chambers.
Well, I'm just an average chap with nothing more than an ordinary grammar school education, and found my way into the Temple through a connection of a youth club, which was associated with Cambridge University. So I met one or two graduates who were in Chambers then, staying at the university settlement in London, and I started as a 16-year-old then, and gradually worked my way through to taking over the Chambers in 1973.
So you don't have any legal background yourself?
None whatsoever, no.
My name is Nicola Williams. I've been at the bar for 6 years. I was called in 1985. I did my law degree at South Bank Polytechnic. Now, I know that a number of you may be concerned about the fact that there may be prejudice against people who do their degrees other than at universities. Well, I'm not going to lie to you, that type of thing does exist, and it's very much alive and well at living at the bar. But that's only one of the many things that you'll have to face, because if you're going to be discriminated against, there are other things, more obvious things, that you could be discriminated against about other than your degree.
I'm a standard northern boy, really. I went to a state comprehensive school, and from there on to do a degree at a polytechnic. At the moment, I'm doing my first 6 pupillage. I'm 3 months into it with Robert Latham, who's quite commonly thought of as one of the leading landlord, tenant and housing barristers. I like to think of him as the king of housing. That's why I chose him as my pupil master. Or I chose to apply to him, put it that way. Was lucky enough to be taken on.
This is Steve Reader, who's a pupil barrister.
You're learning the trade, are you?
I'm trying to.
Should we just take stock where we are? In February, Lambeth undertook to make you an offer of suitable alternative accommodation within 3 months.
That's right. Yes.
You then got a letter saying that you were going to be treated with no greater priority than any other housing applicant.
That's right, yeah.
And that you'd have to wait a considerable time.
Plus the fact that we can't keep it warm anyway, because now that is the only fire we've got.
Yeah. They just don't seem to care. They're just not bothered. They just don't want to. You know, they just don't want to know. And it's as simple as that.
If we are known as specialist chambers, it is as medical specialists.
Mark, I wondered, could you come downstairs? I've got a collection of people down there and I just want someone else to do a quantum, and it's good practice for you. We get together and pool our reactions to the appropriate figure for what we call pain, suffering and loss of amenity.
Right.
Come down and try it. You will see when we get going. First report is a year after the accident. And it says in that her movements are restricted. It's absolutely classic, the sort of movements. She can't wash her hair, she can't carry her heavy shopping and her husband has to do it. She can't get her arm above shoulder level. Then she's seen again 9 months later. She's got 10-degree restriction, and the doctor says that that is permanent.
So it's 10 degrees in what direction?
Just says 10 degrees, but she can now get above shoulder level, so I think it means 10 degrees upwards.
Yes, so it's things like putting up curtains or cleaning the windows.
Yes, basically. Can we just say, since this is the first one of these you've done, you have to go first because we do it in order of seniority. And we do it in order of seniority, obviously, so you're not affected by hearing what those senior to you say. it doesn't matter if you get it wrong, because in your case, we know you're pretty well getting at it.
Right.
And you haven't had the experience of looking at rather a lot of broken arms. So just have a stab, and no one will hold it against it. Well done. Yes, we've got the first bit right anyway.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years basically, and a slight restriction forevermore.
Well, I think I'll just throw in £5,000.
I think I'd say 6 to 7.
6.
I wrote mine down beforehand, and mine was 5.5. So I think it's congratulations to Mark.
How was Designer Judge Marder?
He was great, actually. 240 hours community service.
Well, it's the maximum.
It
but,
is, yeah, but he was looking
no
for
less than our
custody.
client deserved. He's got more lives than a cat, he really has.
He has, yeah.
Well, I'd say it's bang him up.
He's on the judge, hang him higher.
Was that Judge Marder? Oh, he's lovely. He's the one who threw that case out last week of mine.
Which one?
That other shoplifting. She had all this medical evidence to show that she was being treated for amnesia and couldn't remember at all what she was doing half the time.
But presumably she never told that to the prosecution.
No, she probably forgot.
There's nothing to stop you talking about the case you're doing with your opponent.
No, we certainly won't call any of the
Will you be calling her tomorrow, do you think?
Almost certainly. Depends on how long you're going to be with all these witnesses. You want a better position.
Well, as you've seen, I've been very
It may seem odd to outsiders that we should have lunch together. It's one of the joys of the bar.
It'd be quite a good idea to get her lined up at a fixed time, wouldn't it? Perhaps we could talk about that over lunch. Because...
Well, I would be grateful. And the other thing we've got to do, Barbara, we've got to organise those interviews.
Yes. Well, if we can get junior counsel dealing with that. Well,
The bar mess is a traditional feature of circuit life outside London.
we can be cut down on a lot of things agreed. Now, a lot of us here only have soup because we like the croutons.
Nobody should be misled into thinking that it would cause us to pull any punches when we're back in court. If anything, it probably rather sharpens the rivalry and competitive instincts.
It depends on 3 different children. Let's have her here at 2 o'clock tomorrow if it's convenient for her. Much might depend on what we can deal with by way of admissions on the blood.
Well, why don't we see how we go? Have a review at the end of the day.
Who's the chap called? Is it Diaz?
Yes. I think, did he succeed?
Is he retired now?
Yes.
Yeah. Has he been called?
No.
No.
Haven't you read your papers?
You say, and that you're only actually going to get paid for that case on a fee that you don't know what it's going to be determined at anyway. You put in what you think is a fair fee, and you eventually get determined on that fee a year later. You then got to get the case up again in order to appeal it, which might take another year. No other business could operate on that basis. No other business could
Have we ever been against each other? When? A long time ago. At the Bailey. And I can't even remember what the case was about.
And the reality is that we can't survive that. People
Spend all our time appeasing our
There are
bank
people in my chambers who are going up.
Has anyone explained to you about the dining? Yeah? Well, for those of you who mightn't know, you have to eat 24 dinners before you can be called to the bar. Now, if you pass your exams but you haven't eaten all your dinners, it's a moot point as to whether or not you'd be called to the bar. Now, all it means is just literally going into, if you can imagine an old baronial hall, if you like, with long trestle tables and a high table across the top. That's what it's like. You go in there, you eat your food, and you come out. And you have to do that 24 times. That's one of the requirements of becoming a barrister.
I wandered around chambers at lunchtime yesterday and found lights on absolutely everywhere. This is not green. I don't mean to be pompous about it, but could we please turn off lights when it's daylight and they're not needed, all right? Can I ask, in general, several pupils felt that they weren't getting a fair share of the work. And so we cross-examined Ronald about the basis on which he allocates work. And there was a suggestion made the men were getting more than the women. That is just not so. It's absolutely not Chambers policy to treat anybody differently. And I know that you will accept that I wouldn't remain in a set of chambers that allocated its work in any other way.
Was it explained at the meeting as to why it was, or almost exclusively it's only the women who go down to do the notes at the Blue Arrow trial?
That is not so. It is true that some people had been down in Blue Arrow more than others. As I understand it, they like to have somebody who can do a whole week at a time.
Well, I don't know if that's strictly true.
And we
because
know
in-
for a fact that we've had work in a week which we've had to then give elsewhere because we've been allocated the Blue Arrow brief.
I actually have a case tomorrow and they've just swapped me a day with somebody else and it's not been a problem and they haven't said anything about it to me about Gordon's wanting somebody who can do a whole set week.
But he's doing the Blue Arrow brief, £500 a week, I think it is. Such an unprestigious thing to be doing, is it?
Money's got nothing to do with it.
Money has got absolutely nothing to do with it. That is precisely the point which people here don't seem to understand. I'd rather go and be on my feet in the magistrates' court doing remands for £50 than sitting there doing that for £100. It's more
There is
experience.
some kind of covert sexism. Because I
Absolutely.
really will not have it. If women are not doing so well, it's, I suspect, because they are being less forward in putting themselves forward.
It's all well and good to say that it's up to us to build up our practices, and of course that's correct to a certain extent, but also at this level one relies a lot upon the clerks. The clerks give you your work. It most of the time doesn't
You don't
come in
get
your
the
own
work,
name.
you can't build up
It's
a rapport.
allocated, and surely it's the question of allocation. I've built up a rapport with certain solicitors.
I know you have. You've
but-
done very well.
Well, that's beside the point, but it surely is up to the clerks to allow you to build up that rapport.
If a solicitor has rung up and the clerks have said, oh, have Miss Bloggs, and the solicitors then said, well, actually, no, I don't really want her or him or whoever it may be because of this, because they didn't do something very well for me last time, then it'd be really useful to actually know about that.
I haven't had any complaints, and in fact, I do check up on you all. I ring around solicitors regularly, and they all say that you're all doing extremely well.
My troubles don't really start when I get into court. All right, you get the difficult judge and you have to deal with that. It's the little things that happen beforehand. For example, you turn up at court, particularly if it's a court you've never been to before, and the usher thinks you're the defendant. And that has happened to me. I've been mistaken in my times over the last 6 years, been mistaken for the defendant's mother, defendant's... the mother is particularly insulting, usually. Defendant's wife. Well, it's usually a juvenile who's about 16 years old, and I'm not going to tell you my age, but I couldn't be the mother of a 16-year-old child. Right? The defendant's mother, the defendant herself, the defendant's wife or girlfriend. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, they might think I'm the probation officer or the article clerk, but never. It's usually once they've gone through all those lists of things that they realise, well, the only other deductions there can be, the only other deduction's got to be the barrister.
happens if they don't stick to that order now? Look, I mean, let's face it, the council never stuck to it before, so there's nothing to stop them not sticking to it this time, is there, really?
Pete here has got a copy of the order, and there's a penal notice attached which says, to Peter Camp, Director of Housing, London Borough of Lambeth, take notice that unless you obey the directions contained in this order, you'll be guilty of contempt of court and you'll be liable to be committed to prison.
Oh.
So if they don't carry it out,
Yes.
we will apply to commit the Director of Housing to prison.
I don't think he'll let it go that far, do you?
Well, I've yet to persuade a judge, but Lambeth Housing Department would be more efficient if Mr Camp were to conduct it from Wormwood Scrubs rather than Lambeth Town Hall, but it concentrates the mind magnificently, and if you get the Director of Housing at court, he soon make sure that something's done.
The people you come into contact with
Very good.
are always in extraneous circumstances. There's always something out of the ordinary that's happened, which is why I think by definition it's a very interesting job to be in. It's the sort of job where I can do some good, readdress some imbalances in society. And we get the chance to talk a lot, and I like the sound of my own voice.
Lots of people do different things to get buzzes. If I'm waiting for a jury to come back and they've been out for a long time, the defendant is sitting there, their heart is going bump, 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 and my heart likewise is going bump, bump, bump. And when the foreperson of the jury stands up and says not guilty, I want to go, yeah, I like the buzz. Hi, is he in there? Yeah. Hi, can I have my client, please? I know that I'm good at talking to 12 people. I try to charm them. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they say, thanks very much, Mr. Hyam, that was very entertaining, but there's just this slight problem of the evidence against your client, so they'll say thanks, but guilty.
Max, you know from instructing solicitors. Mr. Edwards.
Hi, Mr. Edwards. I'm Paul. I'm going to represent you on this matter. So if you want to come sit here. Now, in fact, you sit here next to me. Max, if you can sit there. Yeah. Okay. Right, you, Paul Edwards, are charged that on the 3rd day of July 1991, you had in your possession a controlled drug of Class B, namely a slab of cannabis weighing out 0.21 kilos, a slab of cannabis weighing 0.2 kilos, and a broken slab consisting of 0.23 kilos with intent to supply them. Can you actually tell me, in your own words, exactly how you came to be in that position?
It's a hierarchical system in the sense that the silks have the nicest rooms and the very junior people share. Every time there's a move round as a result of someone leaving chambers, we all choose in order of seniority where we would like to go next. It's one of the issues, I think, about which people feel more passionately than anything else.
It's got a nice sort of threadbare brown carpet. Notice that.
But has your room got curtains or anything?
No.
We haven't got it. They're very bare.
On the other side.
Yeah, they suddenly said, I'm very sorry, and I've got it wrong.
I've got this fantasy about a massive tea room, that you can really spread all over, because you find everything.
Chambers tea, it's basically just a cup of tea which the pupils make, which takes place in one of the big silks rooms.
Intercourse took place, and subsequently she cried rape. Tony represented him and noticed that the night dress that this woman had apparently been wearing was not an exhibit. He noticed that quite far on, and eventually this night dress was produced, and it came out of a large brown envelope. And it was an Anne Summers night dress with the most incredible sort of phallic symbols all over it. And he got him acquitted. So it was a really good result.
2 joints in the car.
Well, 2
smoked
bits
ones.
of stubbed out roaches, yeah.
All right.
But like, I smoke
we
roll-ups
barristers
as
live
well.
in the real world. You know,
Yeah.
a roach is a joint
Yeah,
once it's been
yeah.
smoked.
A joint is a joint. I mean,
Right. Had you smoked any?
No.
No?
No.
Who had been?
Well, that was earlier on. He rolled them up to start to smell the stink of it. I mean, it was horrible. I wouldn't have smoked that anyway. You know.
Only smoke quality stuff.
Exactly.
All
Yeah.
right. But I mean, I've just been trying to get my head around the law of possession. You think it's a simple English word. It's quite easy in law, but it's not. But essentially, possession is control. All right. So if I say to you, right, just look after that, will you? And just by giving it to you, you've now got control of that silk cut packet. It's mine. it's also yours. In
But I
terms
don't
of
know
law.
what's in it.
But if you open it up,
yeah, then I know what's in it.
Silly hope. There's just a few
It's
custody
cigarettes in there, yeah.
All right. What if you'd opened it up and there'd been cannabis in it? Would you be guilty of possessing the cannabis?
No, you wouldn't.
Why not?
Because you originally
I'm
didn't
the lawyer, and
didn't
I'll
know
ask
it was
you.
there.
Yeah. You see, the law says that you'd be in possession of the pack of cigarettes. Yeah. And if you opened it and there was a bit of cannabis in there, you'd be in possession of that. And you would have to give an explanation how you came to have it in your possession. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And I think, hopefully, your explanation will believe, well, I was in the middle of a conference, my barrister said to me, just hold on to that for a minute. Are you with me? And, well, unless it's a very wicked world, I think you should probably trust your barrister not to give you cigarette packets filled with dope.
Yeah.
Well, I heard you do as well. The cat was out of the bag. They just get paperwork all the time.
Yeah, he works incredibly hard.
What do they make you? Is it just being swatty?
No, well, they put them all in a separate room. They put them down in the library. And he doesn't talk to anybody all day. Whereas I find that we spend most of our time chatting.
I was in court the other day and this I was sitting there waiting to go and she tugged on my gun and she said, I'm looking for my niece, she's a barrister. She's got blonde hair, she's very pretty, she's about 25.
You said, yeah, aren't a lot of those at the bar.
No, I didn't.
Can we just have a word about
Yeah.
Rolf before we start?
Yes, I'll go down and get my papers and come
Okay,
to your
you come
room in a
right
minute.
up.
Yeah,
Thanks very
fine.
I'd be a completely and utterly shit witness. And do you know why? Because I always want to have the last word. And giving evidence in court is a very, very difficult business indeed.
Yeah.
Because you've got 12 people who don't know you, as I told you earlier, who just don't know you, who are thinking when you go in there, despite the fact they're told not to, despite the fact they're told just because someone's been accused, doesn't mean they're guilty. You start off being the accused and you've got some ground to make up. But you've got to come over as somebody that has been stupid. So you own up to being stupid. What you are not is a criminal. Yeah?
In this case, I'm not, yeah.
Well, in this case, I know, well, we're all criminals to a greater or lesser extent, but in this case...
I wouldn't say criminal, though.
Speak for myself. Well, I do.
Mr. Rolf?
Yes.
Hello, Stephen Miller.
We're representing a girl who is very badly brain damaged and epileptic.
Professor Wigglesworth.
Yes.
Come sit down. This is Sally Smith. You've, I think, all met, but have you met Sally Smith before? I don't think you have.
The case relates to a possible claim in negligence at the time prior to her birth.
I'm sorry. I've read through the papers, discussed this with Sally, who you've seen on 2 previous occasions. I'm sorry that after 3 or 4 years now of investigations, you're no nearer to the point where one can say what happened to Julie and what caused the damage. If we start with the question of negligence, it seems to me that everybody in this case, from the medical side and from the lawyers with experience in this sort of case, would say that there was negligence at the time that the original prescription was given to you. Any doctor making a blind prescription, in effect, of something which could have these quite serious results shouldn't have done so. So we are stuck, it seems to me, or seems to both of us, I think, with the original administration of this drug and the possible effect that that might have had. You've had wonderful advice in terms of the quality of the people who you've been advised by from the medical point of view. You couldn't have had better people to advise you as to what, if anything, could be done. But at the end of the day, we're going to have real difficulty in establishing, as we have to as plaintiff in the case, that the general practitioner's original negligence caused or contributed to Julie's present state. I'm very sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Rolfe. I mean, as I think you've observed already, a tremendous amount of effort has gone into trying to find you. And each time one hopes, well, you'll unlock the door and there's the answer. And it's less than satisfactory that the answer hasn't been provided. But we can only, as lawyers, Ms. Smith and I can only advise you upon what prospects of success you'd have in fighting an action. And I think that we really couldn't advise you to go ahead. And I think, I don't know whether it would any way be
well, not being patronising, but I think...
But it wouldn't put the matter right.
It wouldn't put it right. No. And if you struggle for 2 years to try to establish something and then fail anyway, it just perpetuates, keeps it going, the whole sort of investigation.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that it hasn't had a result.
No, that's it.
Okay, let me take you downstairs. I'll have to let you in downstairs because it's locked, okay?
The annoying thing is that himself believes that the ergometric caused the damage.
We often feel guilty about all sorts of things that we do and describe evil to them, and whether in fact that's true or not. I mean, that's part of the human condition, isn't it? Yeah, I really don't think it is anything. I think they've just been extremely unlucky.
Yes, it's very hard.
That's really what it boils down to. They've just had an awful lot of rotten bad luck, and and they've had a lot of rotten bad treatment too. But clearly, people obviously jump to associate the two. But I think that here they're genuinely non-associated.
But it's hard. I thought they were amazing.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Nutty. Have you finished it?
Nope.
Oh, you haven't finished it? Golly.
Judgment. Well, I think judgment will be postponed. But we've...
you haven't heard from Jean Young?
Raghill and Braithwaite have been released.
Right.
And it'll finish tomorrow, I should think.
You got the sons of murder on Monday at the Old Bailey, as you know.
That's right, yes.
Johnny, what do you mean they've been released?
Cup of
They've
tea,
been released on bail or
Kingdom
what?
for a cup of tea. Can I have a cup of tea and a biscuit, Ian?
Johnny, let's mention... What do you mean they've been released on bail? Or...
They've been released on bail on the basis that we've effectively not been able to argue the appeal.
Oh, I see. So, I mean, it's just a question of allowing the appeal in their respect when they come back.
Absolutely.
It's nothing. There's the second tranche of the Jason Swift murder down there just come in. Start reading once again.
Oh, God.
That'll keep you busy. And it's called as VAT form for you. Would you like that as well?
Ronald, I honestly think your timing is really quite appalling.
The fees that one might expect are obviously subject to one's overheads and chambers expenses and all the rest that come along. But I would think as a rough rule of thumb, this particular prosecution brief might command, say, £5,000 on the brief, and then there will be daily fees for every day after the first day of the order of £300 or thereabouts. And then there are additional fees for consultations that we've had in advance. Tonight I'm chairing a meeting of the Circuit Committee of the South Eastern Circuit. That's the governing body of the circuit. That's barristers practicing in London and the South East of England. And we're meeting in Middle Temple.
If we could pull the chairs back, extend. You want this table extended as far as the other? Minutes of the last meeting you've all had. May I sign those? Thank you. Right, well, can I go into one of the next item on the agenda, which I know is a matter of very great concern, namely the central taxing unit. And as we all know, the system that's been introduced whereby barristers' fees over a certain level, and indeed solicitors, are all referred to a central taxing or assessment unit, is causing very considerable anguish and hardship. Could I have some indications of how people feel things are going on the ground?
Bob.
Stephen Solly.
We're in a cleft stick. On the one hand, we want to give the central taxing unit a chance to get off the ground. But on the other hand, we have over 1,000 members of this circuit who are being deprived of money that they earned 9, 12, 15, 18 months ago. And the bottom line is that they have to pay for work that's been done, work that's been done a long time ago. And members of the bar cannot, in these times, suffer such delays. It wouldn't be tolerated in any other business, and they have to be paid. So we cannot give them too much time to get through their teething problems.
In a good year, if you take away expenses, then I probably would earn about 30 grand. 30 grand before tax. Now that may be 30 grand for 5 12-hour days and at least 10 hours to be put in on a weekend. You cannot turn around and say to someone on the dole, I'm hard up. And I think a lot of barristers do that, just speaking generally. They say, because I'm a barrister, therefore I should have a right to be able to take 3 holidays a year, to be able to send my kids to private schools, and if possible, to have a little cottage that I can repair to at the weekend. That isn't, to me, a priority. I realise that, current prices, 30 grand a year before tax, is not doing too badly. Certainly, if you compare it to teachers, if you compare it to nurses, you're getting paid way over the whack.
What have you been doing? Some of the pupils, have you?
We've been really ambushed by
who?
A posse of enraged pupils who are still complaining that work is not being fairly allocated. And in particular,
sorry, John.
They say that several of them have had no Crown Court trials, and
Hugo, give us a glass.
Other pupils have had lots.
Sometimes it's a combination of bad luck and on holiday at the wrong time or whatever, and you just don't actually get your foot in the door.
What pupils say is it's a rather coincidence that it seems to be the women who don't get the trials over and over again.
Well, is the complaint there's favouritism in dishing out this work?
Well, that's the basis of what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I should think there's probably not.
But just let me ask you this, David, but how serious are these complaints?
Oh, I thought that several of them were very serious. They are genuinely upset.
I think you've got to leave it to a combination of Ronald and the solicitor to make an informed choice. But what manifestly is wrong is that if there is any specific prejudice against any particular pupil or group, and if there is, it must be investigated and dealt with by Robin.
Being called to the bar tonight means that I'm actually, at long last, a barrister, as opposed to being a law student. As for the sort of archaic tradition of tonight, I think in some ways it's a bad thing because it's a good illustration of the cloistered world of barristers, but also, in a way, it's quite a good thing because it does mean that you have to realise and take quite seriously your professional duties and your ethical duties as a barrister.
I was going to be a Methodist parson, and I read theology.
Some of us think you are a Methodist.
Well, that's absolutely right. And when it's convenient, I give that impression. But there came a time when I realised that money wasn't everything, so I came to the bar. And that's really the whole explanation of that.
Well, you'd clearly given up any prospect of being a Methodist parson when I first saw you in court because you appeared in a dinner jacket.
Yes, I did. You're quite right.
In Leeds.
We'd had a wild mess the night before, and I turned up before Hinchcliffe.
That's right, and I was Hinchcliffe's marshal.
That's right.
1967.
And I suddenly realised I was wearing a dinner jacket in court, so I folded my gown across it. But at the end of the case, Ray Hinchcliffe sent a very nice note saying how particularly touched he'd been by my willingness to overdress just to please him.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now can I wipe the red lipstick
You
off?
Right. Shall we go?
The press thought it right not to criticise judges. And that is, of course, now something which the press do quite regularly, and I think it's very healthy.
I don't. I think it's positively poisonous. And the way they put the Lord Chief Justice in the pillory repeatedly is an absolute scandal.
Yes, but Gilly, as you've made it quite clear, you want to become a High Court judge from your remarks.
I have had it said to me that I am competent enough to become a judge. But if I want to become a judge, then I have decisions to make about whether I'm out about my sexuality.
I hope to become a QC. I would very much like it. I think it would be a nice rounding off point to my career. But if it means that I have to compromise things that matter a great deal to me, then I would rather not have it.
Miss Mary Jane Ng Wong Hing, in the name of the bench, I call you to the degree of the utter bar.
Dear Siu Kusi, in his absence.
In the name of the bench, I call Mr. Tia Siu Kui, in his absence, to the degree of the utter bar.
Stephen Reader.
Mr. Stephen Reader, in the name of the bench, I call you to the degree of the utter bar.
Mrs. Vivian Irene Elizabeth Walters.
You haven't simply secured a license to make money. You are on the threshold of a profession. Behind you and backing you up will always be your inn. It provides the fellowship which it has been providing to barristers, judges, and students for hundreds of years.
And a quick word about the clients. In the drugs case, Paul Hyam's client was acquitted on the judge's direction. In the housing case, Robert Latham's clients were rehoused. And in the Broadwater Farm case, as we all now know, the Court of Appeal overturned the convictions of the 3 appellants. We'll be back in June. Until then, good night.